if I had to drop another $16,000 on that property, that would wipe out literally 4 or 5 years of cash flow up front. Yeah. And so if you're dealing with a property that rents for $750 a month, and that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about an asset you're having to repair or maintain.
Yeah.
So I started buying better neighborhoods with higher rent numbers.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Investing Real Talk with me, Sherwin G.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tyler. Good to see you all.
Good. How you doing, Tyler?
I guess actually I just said good to see you all, but we're not actually looking at anyone except I'm looking at you, Sherwin. So yeah. I'm doing well. Thanks, man.
I mean, they'll be looking at us if they're hopefully watching.
They're
on
looking
YouTube,
at us,
or maybe listening through us on. I don't know if we're gonna eventually make this on podcast or audio only. But for now, I think we have a YouTube channel. So welcome everybody. Baby. Thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe. I know this is our third episode only. I thought you were saying boo.
I don't know. I literally put up my boo, and I meant like and subscribe. Hit that button right now.
Oh, gotcha. Good. Yeah, I mean, this is our third episode, and Tyler, maybe we want to recap the first two episodes. In this.
Oh man, you're putting pressure on me. So yeah, I mean, obviously this is episode 3. We're still learning as we go, but hopefully you guys saw the first 2 episodes. One was more or less kind of an introduction about who we are, what we do, what our experience is like. Episode 2, again, hopefully you watched that, was more so kind of about the why of investing and how we kind of got into this industry. So I mean, I think my question for you, Sherwin, is just if you could recap the folks what your big why was, and then I can go into mine. But really, I think looking forward into this episode, we're going to start talking about some of the details and lessons learned of our first property. But a quick recap of last episode. Sherwin, what was your big why behind hopping into the industry of real estate?
Yeah, I think, my why sort of changed throughout my life, depending on the situation of my life, at that particular moment. But I think episode 2 mainly focused on our why of why we decided to invest in real estate and how we sort of set ourselves up to buy our first real estate property, right? So my why back then was because I was just kind of tired of paying rent. I wanted to buy a place and put my money into a mortgage and, instead of paying my landlord, kind of buy something for myself. So that was sort of my why. I know you have a different why, and my why now is different. It's more for investments, more for my family right now is my why. Giving me the freedom and flexibility to spend more time at home, spend more time with my kids, and spend more time with my family. So that's sort of my big why now, and we'll talk about it through as we talk about our real estate journey through our episodes. How about you?
And so I mean, my whys stayed pretty consistent over the years, so it's interesting to kind of hear how yours did evolve. But yeah, mine from the get-go was really investing focused, mostly because I wanted, like you said, more time with friends and family. I wanted to kind of create a life that gave me some more flexibility. So I was from the get-go looking for that cash flow. And so my why, again, family, friends, similar to you, Sherwin. More time, more flexibility, and the ability to really just take control of my life. And if I wanted to get away from a 9-to-5 job. So that's the big why. But I think this is going to be a cool episode because Sherwin and I are going to dive into the very first deal that we ever got into. Now, I think the theme of our show is typically going to be more multifamily focused, but it's cool to just kind of learn about Sherwin's first deal and hopefully mine as well. But I started off in the single family world. Sherwin started off in the condo world. And I think when I started, that was more of the natural progression. I thought, okay, buy a single family, learn about that industry, then maybe, graduate into a small multifamily eventually, and then get to multifamily, a large multifamily. But so that was kind of my way to ease into the real estate world. But we're going to be sharing some of our screens, some of our numbers, showing some old photos so we can kind of reminisce and look at our deals in depth. But I'm looking forward to this episode, man. I don't know how we want to start, but
well, it'd be great to hear your story. I know. Well, for viewers or listeners that's first time listening here, maybe go back to the episode too, because we kind of talked about of how we set ourselves up to kind of buy our first property, sort of like figuring out our finances, our net worth, and so forth. So that's sort of like a good, good kind of setup for this. But you don't have to. And for kind of listeners who are kind of like, "I already have my first property, I don't need to listen to this episode," but we're gonna hopefully dive in more to sort of like the lessons learned of that we learned from buying our first property and how we kind of learn these lessons to buy future investments. So, so stay tuned.
Yes.
So we're trying to relate it
Yeah.
back. So it's kind of like a good episode for everybody, whether you're trying to buy your buy your first property, or already buy your first property and just want to learn more about our stories and sort of like our experience, how that translates to our, future investment experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I can start hopping in here on my
Yeah.
first investment, but I will say, just to kind of reiterate what Sherwin said, like this first investment, I think for a lot of us in the industry, it probably provided the most amount of education out of all my deals, just because I was brand new to the world of real estate.
Mhm.
I never even knew what a contract looked like. I didn't
Yeah.
really properly know how to evaluate people to work with,
Mhm.
locations, tenant classes, like
Mhm.
asset types. So again, my first deal was a single family property in the middle of nowhere, Midwest Indianapolis.
Mhm.
And coming from the West Coast, we're in our own little bubble out here. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone ever thought about investing or buying a property in the Midwest, but
Yeah.
sure enough, my first investment was a little single family, 2 bed, 1 bath. I think it was definitely less than 1,000 square feet.
What was
Um,
it? What was your criteria? Why, like, I know you're like, why'd you choose that? Like, what was your investment criteria that you were looking for this first deal that you
Yeah, so it was really, I was focused more on cash flow, and I was looking
had?
at the acquisition price to rent ratio. So I was looking at what could I buy that was super cheap but would cash flow enough for me to try and break the chains of the 9 to 5 job.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so this property was $37,000. So first of
Mhm.
all, that was like attractive to me. I was like, wait a second, I can buy a house for $37,000. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's how much a nice car out here costs, or
yeah.
I guess anywhere really costs. And then on top of that, it rented for $750 a month, or at least it projected to rent for $750 a month.
Okay.
And so my thought process was like, okay, well, yes, I'm going to have to account for some expenses, but that's probably going to be another 350, $400 in my pocket every month. And if I were just to, buy over the lifespan of my investing career, buy 10 of these things, well, there we go. Like, that's my
Yeah,
passive
yeah,
income to
yeah.
survive in the Bay Area. And I
Yeah,
was
adds
like,
up,
this
right?
is,
Yeah.
this makes a lot of sense. So
Mhm.
the first criteria really was acquisition price to rent
Mhm.
ratio.
Mhm.
Um, and then, so, from that, we'll call it initial analysis, I worked with some folks in the Indianapolis market to kind of target this asset that was presented to me.
Mhm.
And I don't know where we want to go from here, but it was definitely the biggest learning lessons of my life. What I'll do is I'll share actually my screen, a
Okay.
couple things to start with. So um, the first thing I'll pop up here are the actual numbers. Or actually, let me start with a picture. We'll start with a picture.
So you bought like was it a 2-1 in Indianapolis?
So it was a 2 bedroom, 1 bath in Indianapolis,
Yeah,
$37,000,
yeah,
and it rented for $750 a month.
yeah.
I'll
What,
show
what,
you.
yeah. What made you interested in that market? Like, how did you even find it? Because you're in the Bay Area, right? A lot of people are like out there. Might be. How do you even find investments out of state? Like, how do you get that
Yep. So
started?
this first investment was through a turnkey company, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't find this on my own, but this is a property that was sent to me via a turnkey company.
Hmm.
And this is what the beauty looked like from the get-go. So
Ooh,
again, a little 2 bedroom, 1 bath in
I
the middle of nowhere,
I like it. I
Indianapolis.
smell value add.
It looks, again, coming from the Bay Area, I was like, what am I buying? Why am I doing this? But the
Yeah,
numbers
yeah.
made sense. So this is your little 2 bed, 1 bath
Mhm.
here. It's got a garage there, and it definitely needs some work. You can tell,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
this is, frankly, something I would probably not live in myself.
yeah, yeah.
But again, at that time, I was, again, new to the industry, kind of naive. Um, and you're kind of taught to buy that ugly house, at least if you learn through kind of what the value add tactic is. So
Mhm.
anyways, this was the exterior. um interior. We got some horrible shots here, but it's a old little blue kitchen there.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, I bought this house without having seeing it in person.
Uh,
I eventually flew out there, a few months after I closed on the property.
yeah.
The other thing I want to show real quick also is kind of, I think I have some photos. Sorry, I'm sharing my
Hey,
website here, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. Hey, Tyler, what website is this, by the way? Just
Oh
FYI.
yeah, this is jumpinrealestate.com, where I actually lay out
Little
and
plug there.
document a lot of my investing, we'll call it journey.
This is awesome, man.
So this
I need a website like this.
this is a little bit of the, we'll call it, it wasn't a super spruced up renovation, but we
Uh,
did we did renovate the exterior a little bit, got new windows and fixed some of the siding, um, put some pretty ugly linoleum down there on the floor, new water heater, refinished the hardwood floors, and that's the cleaned up basement. So anyways, that's the first property, really. Again,
yeah.
$37,000, 2 bed, 1 bath, 2,000 miles away from me, rented for $750 a month.
And
Didn't know what I was getting into.
you manage all this from the bear, like all the the rehab and
Yeah, so it was a joint effort, we'll call it. Like I worked at this turnkey company, and they connect you with a lot of the contractors, and
oh, gotcha.
their whole thing is to present you an asset or a property,
Hmm.
and they're say that, that they say that we're going to help you renovate it, we're going to help you
Mm,
manage it,
hmm.
we're going to make it as turnkey as possible.
Gotcha.
Um,
So it's like it was like a package deal, because like just looking at those pictures, I'm like, man, Tyler, you're super brave. I mean, for a first in property, like a lot of people will be scared about, oh my gosh, look at this property, look at all this work
oh,
that I
dude,
have
I
to do,
mean,
and I think what you just mentioned, I think it's like a package deal. Like, hey, if you buy this turnkey property, we're making it easier for you. We already have the construction team. We have a property management team ready for you. It's almost just one click buy, invest your money, and then this is the potential that you could be earning, right? So they kind of made it easy for
yeah,
you. Whether or not that's true or not, that's
oh,
sort of
they
up to the
they
investor,
sell
right?
it as an easy turnkey operation. I will say the pictures that I presented earlier
Mm-hmm.
were a lot worse than the marketing photos they sent me. And so here's
Uh,
actually an interesting story.
yeah,
I was having a lot of lack of communication between them and myself, which was creating some frustrations. And I
yeah,
actually, through the process, met some investors out there in Indianapolis, and I had a guy actually go out there and take some photos for me.
yeah.
And those were what he sent back to me. And I was like, and it was a lot worse than I expected. And that's when
Uh,
my heart kind of dropped.
did you go see the property before you actually bought it or closed on
No,
it?
no, I went out there. I flew out there 3 months after I closed.
Wow, so sight
Yeah.
unseen.
So I
And
saw it sight
okay.
unseen, or I bought it sight
About insane.
unseen.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Wow.
will say, I mean, I did a little bit more research, and a
Mhm.
couple other things I did, that I'll mention here
Yeah.
are just even some. Again, this is me investing out of state as a naive, investor, but
Mhm.
I did a lot of Google Street View, ran some numbers about some neighboring assets, and so these are actually some street view shots I took from Google when I bought the property. But this was across the street,
Oh, they're
valued
nice.
on Zillow for
Yeah.
94,000. So the neighborhood didn't look horrible.
Yeah.
This is actually the garage you can see of the property I bought. So this is
Oh,
next
okay.
door.
Yeah.
Not a horrible looking house, and it was, I think, valued at around $67,000
Yeah.
at the time. This is the back of the street behind the house. It's
Yeah.
like they didn't look it didn't look like a horrible neighborhood at the time, and it
No.
really wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they always say, like, buy the ugliest house on the block. And
Exactly.
I
So, I
mean,
mean, a few things that I liked about it is you could see my all-in cost was under 50K.
mhm.
Gross rent was 750 a month. There was a large lot size. In the Midwest, stone siding / brick is more coveted, I would say, because of the weather. And you can see kind of the tree line neighborhood. So those are a few things that I liked about the actual location at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and then just kind of hop into I'll do a quick little recap here. This is what the property looks like now. So after 1 year of holding, I got about a year of cash flow that I pocketed. But then
Mhm.
unexpectedly, I got a call saying, actually from a friend who was visiting the market, saying, "Hey Tyler, there's a lockbox on your front door." And
Uh,
that caught me off guard. I was like, what do you mean there's a lockbox on my front door?
yeah.
Long story short, the tenant had left. Kind of just got up and left. My property manager didn't even tell me about that. I had to call him and say, what's going on here? There's a lockbox on my front door. So there
Yeah.
was another massive red flag in terms of lack of communication with my property manager, especially from
Yeah.
someone that's, out of state.
Uh-huh.
And so I ran into a situation where I had a vacant unit in the Midwest,
Uh-huh.
and I had no tenant, no income coming in.
Mhm.
Apparently they kind of trashed the place, and it needed $16,000 of work on the interior.
That just wipes up your cash flow, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was struggling. I was like, man, this is, I don't know if this real estate thing is going to be for me, man.
Mhm.
And so that's where I kind of freaked out, we'll
How,
call it.
how did you just to go back, like how did you find this turnkey property, and did you find the market first, or you found this turnkey property first and then they had this investment in Minneapolis,
I found the turnkey company first,
okay.
actually through a podcast. And so
Oh, okay.
I was heavily invested in
Gotcha.
podcast listening back in 2016.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was trying to figure out how to get ahead of the game in the world of investing in finance. And so I was listening to this podcast, and this
Mm,
guy came on talking about, turnkey real estate companies and how
mhm.
he's built a portfolio of cash flowing properties. And I
Yeah.
just got hooked right away, man. And so that's how I found it. And I kind of fell into this market, which I'm now uh, very much a fan of. This is the Indianapolis market. But
Okay.
yeah, dude, I was so naive going into this thing. I bought the property. We didn't talk about this. I bought the property all cash.
Mhm.
My thought process there was to not have a mortgage, not have those monthly bills.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to be safer for me. Now, obviously I wouldn't say obviously, but at least for my strategy, using the power of leverage is a lot more effective to kind of grow and scale,
Mm,
and have less cash in the deal. But yeah,
mm,
bought it all cash, didn't want to have a mortgage, didn't want to have to worry about paying bills every month.
mm.
And I just kind of went all in on this thing, dude, as you can tell.
Yeah. I mean, like you learn some valuable lessons, right? I think there's that other saying you always say, like, you'll not make you won't make money on your first deal, but you'll learn a lot more from your first deal than to sort of carry over to the next investment properties. Carrying the experience over and the lessons learned from that, right?
Exactly. Well, so the last thing I'll touch on before we kind of touch
Mhm.
more on we'll call lessons learned. I just want to show everyone
Yeah,
kind of where this property is at right now.
looks
And
nice. You
and
did that?
so no. So here's the thing. So I
Oh,
bought this property for $37,000.
yeah.
Um, I then sold it a year later because I guess some lessons learned
Yeah,
were, well, we'll talk about that later. But
yeah.
I sold it a year later for 41,000. But so bought it
Oh,
for 37, sold
yeah.
it for 41.
A
Pretty
year
much
later.
a year later.
Wait, was it rehab? Did you do this exterior rehab
No,
like
I didn't
this?
do this. This is what
Oh,
the next buyer did. So
wait.
they
So
bought it
so
for 41.
so did you do anything in the exterior before you sold it, or
Nothing
just
crazy other than
okay?
like I replaced the front door, I updated the window, I
Okay.
redid the garage door, and I
And a
did
lot of
some
the and a
painting.
lot of the and a lot of the interior work that you showed earlier. Okay.
Interior work
Yeah.
was where the was some of the
Yeah.
work was meant
Yeah. Sorry.
was
Sorry. I
done.
mean, yeah, I didn't mean to keep interrupting
No,
you
it's
on
all
this.
good. It's all good.
Okay. Okay.
So you can actually see the history here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, what got me later was like looking back at the history of this. So I bought it for $37,000.
Okay.
The turnkey company slash wholesaler that I bought it from bought it for 18,000 back in
Wow.
2016. So they made a solid, probably about 20K off of me.
And what year did you buy it after
I
the?
bought it December of 16. So they bought it they
Oh,
bought it
wait.
October of
Wait.
16.
So
So
same year.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. So a couple months later, they
yeah,
just
basically a turnkey company they're working with wholesalers. So they're picking up off market properties pretty cheap. So they
huh.
bought that house for 18,000 in October of 16.
And didn't do anything to it, probably,
Didn't
right?
do anything. I
Real
bought it and
estate.
renovated it and bought it for 37. So they made, about 20K
Yeah.
off of that
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah.
You'll then see, a year later, once the tenant left and I was freaking out, I listed it for 49,000 a year later,
Okay.
a year and a couple months, we'll call it,
Yeah.
49,000. Sold it for 41
Hmm.
here. And then this person took it over and renovated it.
Yeah.
And they then sold it in 19 for 74,000. And now, the estimate's
Yeah.
not always right, but they're
Yeah.
valuing it
Yeah.
around 91,000.
Woo.
So the person that bought it for me for 41,
Yeah.
they did some work. I mean, it looks good. Like this is the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks nice.
Um, this is the kitchen. Looks a lot better than how it did before when I owned it, honestly.
Mm.
So they made some money off of me, which is fine. This is the world of investing.
Yeah.
That initial wholesaler sold it to me for $18,000.
Yeah.
I bought it for 37. I
Yeah.
sold it for 41.
Yeah.
They sold it for 75, and now it's worth 90.
Jeez.
So,
And
um,
did you say it was cash flowing the year that you held it?
yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I literally bought all cash. I had only expenses were property taxes and insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that reminds me, I didn't even get to share my little spreadsheet. So I'll share that right now.
Yeah.
Just to give everyone a little bit of an example of what I was looking at. So,
Yeah. Oh man, you're gonna make
um,
me look bad. I don't have no fancy spreadsheets or anything. So
so I'll say this: when I was first investing, I didn't have this spreadsheet built out. I
okay.
basically started using this after that first deal because I
Mm,
knew I had to get my numbers down a lot better.
yeah.
Um, but my first initial numbers were like, okay, 750 is coming in.
Yeah.
I knew I had like insurance of, I think it's, again, this is super cheap compared to the Bay Area. My
Yeah.
taxes were $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
I think my insurance was like right around $500. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to be basically cash flowing $422 a month off of this property.
Mm,
So the numbers just made sense, but yeah, $37,000 of upfront cost.
uh,
Got my rent there, and I was basically cash flowing conservatively. This is also factoring in 5% vacancy, 10% repairs, 10% property management. I was still cash flowing 422 a month, basically.
that's good.
Um, and again, my whole thought process was saying basically, if I eventually got to the point where I could have 10 of these things, I could support myself, you know,
Yeah.
uh, pretty well.
Yeah.
So
I was just using my calculator on my computer, like 422 times 12, so it's about like $5,000 that
yeah,
year.
on a $37,000 investment.
Yeah. But then you said you had like 16K in repairs.
So I didn't actually, yes, I didn't
Okay.
actually go through with repairing the property.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
they hit me with, hey, we need $16,000 to get this
Yeah.
rent
Yeah.
ready again. I said, no,
Yeah.
let's just sell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
I
a,
sold
that's
it as is.
Yeah, that's a one lesson. Well, maybe not for my first property, but future properties where single family, like all it takes is kind of like a broken water heater or a broken roof that you have to replace, and it just totally wipes off your cash flow for the whole year.
100%, man.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the property, depends on the situation and so forth. But I've heard that, oh, that's why single family. But there's pluses and minuses about it.
Yeah.
But wow, that's
So
great,
I
man.
think what I'll do is I'll do a super quick recap of kind of my lessons learned really
Yeah.
quickly here, and then we'll
Okay.
hop into your first investment, man.
Okay.
I think for me, there's a number of lessons learned on this first property, which I mentioned earlier, then translate over to kind of my future investing career. But
Hmm.
a lot of it stems from I didn't properly vet the people I was working with. I
Yeah.
kind of just jumped in very naively without doing a lot of research and vetting of them. So I didn't partner with the right people,
Mm,
frankly. Didn't partner with the right property manager. I didn't take those red flags of lack of communication really to heart, and I kind of let them go and do their thing and just kind of ignored them. But I think if there's red flags that pop up in terms of anything in your business, you have to address them right away. So
mm,
the lack of communication from my property manager was a red flag, which like I said, just kind of ignored. I should have just taken control in my own hands and found we'll call it a new property manager like ASAP. It took me until like finding my property vacant to make that change.
mhm,
So not vetting the people properly, not taking action on red flags, not buying in the best neighborhood with a tenant class or a tenant that would just skip town without telling anyone.
mhm,
That's obviously a lesson on potentially the tenant class you're dealing with
mhm,
in a C class neighborhood. And then that actually then prompted me to start buying in better neighborhoods.
mhm,
So, maybe down the line when we start talking about some of our other experience, I then started buying in better neighborhoods
mhm.
with higher rent too. And you brought up a good point, Sherwin, the fact that if I had to drop another $16,000 on that property, that would wipe out literally 4 or 5 years of cash flow
Mhm.
up front.
Yeah.
And so if you're dealing with a property that rents for $750 a month, and that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about an asset you're having to repair or maintain.
Yeah.
So I started buying better neighborhoods with higher rent
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's a great point because a lot of people they look at that shiny object syndrome. They're like, oh, 750 cash flow a month.
yep.
That's what I want. And maybe it's I've heard other people that bought turnkey properties, and you know majority of them are successful. I had one friend that just bought, and similar situation like yours. It was sold as a turnkey property, so she didn't have to do any rehab, and found out there was a lot of plumbing issues, a lot of different issues that wasn't known, and all this other stuff. So now she's under the dilemma of like whether I should sell it or keep it or not. But
Mhm.
no, there's a great. I mean, I think. Did you mention why you decided to sell and not keep it? I forgot.
Yeah, I think, well, the good thing is, so having held that thing for a year,
Yeah,
I had then already kind of identified the lessons learned and what I did wrong. And
yeah,
so I knew long term, I didn't want to hold on to this like looking back, the fact that it's worth like 90K now, like that obviously hurts a little bit. Like I would have doubled my money or whatnot if I put some more effort into it. But
yeah,
I made up my mind to say, okay, I've gone through this first property, I've held it for a year. These are the issues that popped up. I've learned from that. Let's
yeah.
make those adjustments and get better for deal two.
Uh,
So I made up my mind. I said, hey, I don't want to hold this property long term because of XYZ reasons, bad location.
mhm,
Well, not bad location, not the most desirable location,
mhm,
poor property management, not a
mhm,
stable tenant class. And so
mhm,
I made up my decision and made up my mind and said, hey, I'm just going to start buying in better neighborhoods
mhm.
and take these lessons learned and actually take action on them. So
Yeah.
I wanted to just get rid of it. I also didn't like the fact that I had all my money tied up in that asset. Not
Uh,
all my money, but like, I had 100% equity in it, and it was
mhm,
just $40,000 just sitting there, not performing, not
yeah,
doing anything. So I was like, let
yeah,
me get my money back
yeah,
and try and figure out what the next step is going to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was great.
So
I mean, I mean, to segue to my first buying experience, it's totally opposite,
it's quite
probably.
different, but I
Yeah, I
like the
mean, opposite. Yeah,
contrast. I
yeah,
like the
yeah. I
contrast.
mean, not op. Yeah, it's quite different.